Welcome to Elselah Books Podcast. Today we're diving into the absolutely incredible life of Adoniram Judson. Now, this is a story about a brilliant skeptic whose entire worldview just gets shattered literally in a single night. And that one event kicks off a journey of unbelievable hardship and, well, historic impact. So that really brings us to the core question here. What does it take to turn a passionate doubter into an unwavering pioneer? We're going to look at how this guy, who basically told his family their faith was nonsense, ended up becoming one of the most influential and just tough-as-nails missionaries in all of history. So, let's meet the man himself, Adoniram Judson. He was born way back in 1788, and his dad was a minister, super devout. And Adoniram, he was wicked smart, super ambitious. But by the time he hit his early 20s, he was completely convinced his dad's faith was, well, just an illusion. He was dead set on making his own way in the world, guided only by pure logic and reason.
And he wasn't quiet about it either. On his 20th birthday of all days, he drops this bombshell on his parents. Can you imagine? For his father, who's a pastor, this wasn't just some intellectual debate. It was like watching all his hopes for his super talented son just shatter into a million pieces.
So you've got this huge split in his life, right? On one side, the deeply religious home he grew up in. On the other, this new, intellectual, we're too smart for that world he's diving into. And a lot of this was pushed along by this really charismatic, really skeptical college buddy named Jacob Eames. Eames basically convinced him that faith was just, a crutch for people who couldn't handle reality.
Okay, so Judson's out on his own, looking for adventure, being independent, and he stops for the night at this tiny inn in the middle of nowhere. But here's the thing. He can't get any sleep. Why? Because through the paper-thin walls, he can hear these awful, agonizing sounds. The sounds of a man dying in the room right next door. Judson's lying there, trying to make sense of it, trying to use his new philosophy. He's thinking, well, an enlightened guy like me, a skeptic, he'd face death calmly. But the sounds he was hearing, they weren't calm. Not at all. It was pure, raw terror. Finally, the awful sounds stop. The next morning, Judson is just completely shaken up. He goes down to find the innkeeper and tries to act all cool and casual about it, asking, hey, who was that guy who passed away last night? And the innkeeper's answer, it just changed everything. The man who died screaming in terror, it was Jacob Eames, his brilliant, confident atheist friend, the very guy who led him away from faith. I mean, boom, in that 1 second, Judson's entire worldview just crumbled. It wasn't that his philosophy didn't offer comfort. It was that it had totally failed its biggest cheerleader when it mattered most. If it's useless at the moment of death, what good is it really? Yeah, that one night completely flipped his life upside down. He goes back home, starts to rethink this whole faith thing he'd so proudly tossed aside, and then he enrolls in seminary. His new goal wasn't just to believe something for himself, it was to take that belief to the furthest corners of the world.
And you really can't overstate how crazy this idea was back then. I mean, today, we hear about international missionaries all the time, but in the early 1800s in America, nope. The idea basically didn't exist. There were no agencies, no how-to guides, no one to back you up. Judson wasn't just signing up for something. He was literally inventing it.
Around this time, he also meets and falls for Anne Hasseltine. And let me tell you, she was just as brave and committed as he was. His marriage proposal was basically a letter saying, hey, want to sign up for a life of probable hardship and constant danger? And she said yes. Get this, just 2 weeks after they got married in 1812, they were on a boat headed for Burma, a place that was known for being, well, really not friendly to foreigners. 7. Just let that number sink in. 7 years. That's how long it took. 7 years of grinding it out, learning an insanely hard language, getting used to a totally new culture, dealing with setback after setback, all before he saw a single person convert.
And man, those 7 years were brutal. The Burmese language was just ridiculously complex. The local rulers were suspicious of them, sometimes even openly hostile. And on top of all that, tropical diseases were a constant danger, a deadly threat that tragically took the life of their very first child.
But believe it or not, the worst was still ahead. A war breaks out between Britain and Burma, and Judson, an American, gets mistaken for an English spy. He's arrested and thrown into this disgusting prison for 21 months. We're talking torture, starvation, and pretty much every day thinking this is the day they're going to execute me.
And through all this horror, his entire life's work, this meticulous translation of the Bible into Burmese, was hanging by a thread, and it was saved by one person, his wife, Anne.
She risked everything, smuggling him food, pleading with officials, and she came up with this brilliant idea to hide the manuscript pages by sewing them into a pillow that she'd bring to him in his cell.
The price they paid, personally, was just immense. Shortly after he was finally released, Judson lost Anne and their second child to disease. He would eventually remarry, only to lose his second wife too. But somehow, in the middle of all that heartbreaking loss, the seeds he had planted in that tough, rocky ground, well, they started to grow into something amazing.
And the scale of his impact? It's huge. Over his 38 years there, he helped start 63 churches. But his influence went way beyond just that. His story, his example, directly inspired more than 160 other people to become missionaries and follow his path. It created this ripple effect that spread all over the world.
And his biggest legacy, that project that was saved because of a pillow in a prison, was the finished translation of the entire Bible into Burmese. It was just this monumental achievement, a work of incredible scholarship and faith. And what's really amazing is that his translation is still the one being used in Myanmar today. So, Adoniram Judson's journey from a defiant skeptic to this unstoppable pioneer is just such a powerful story about transformation. It really makes you think, doesn't it? What does it take to dedicate your entire life to a single purpose, especially when everything is stacked against you? Thank you for listening to our podcast. Try to get this book, read it, and be blessed.